Imagine walking into what seemed like a fun after-school club in the 1950s at a school for boys with intellectual disabilities, getting extra treats, baseball game trips, and all the oatmeal you could eat, only to learn decades later that the oatmeal was secretly mixed with radioactive materials as part of a government-funded nutrition study. This is the MIT Quaker Oats radioactive isotope feeding study at the Fernald State School in Massachusetts, a documented human radiation experiment that took place from 1946 to 1953. The Walter E. Fernald State School housed children and young adults with developmental disabilities, many from low-income families or without other placement options. Researchers from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, in collaboration with Quaker Oats Company and supported by the U.S. Atomic Energy Commission, selected a group of boys for what was called the Science Club. The program was presented to the boys and their guardians as a special club offering rewards like extra milk, desserts, outings to Fenway Park, and membership perks. The club met regularly, and the boys consumed milk and oatmeal provided by the researchers. The milk contained small amounts of radioactive calcium, and the oatmeal was laced with radioactive iron. These were tracer isotopes, non-lethal doses intended to track how the body absorbed minerals from food. The study aimed to compare mineral uptake in institutionalized children versus healthier populations, with the belief that results could improve general nutrition knowledge. Parents or guardians signed consent forms that described the study as nutritional research but did not mention radiation or isotopes. The forms used general language about blood studies and vitamin research. No mention was made of potential risks from radioactive materials. Even though radiation exposure standards existed at the time, the boys consumed the dosed food over several years. Researchers collected blood and urine samples to measure isotope levels. The doses were kept low, below levels then considered dangerous, but the experiment proceeded without full disclosure of the radioactive component. Some boys later recalled the milk appearing to glow faintly under certain lights, though this was not part of official records. The study remained largely unknown until the early 1990s. When journalist Eileen Wellsome and others uncovered documents through Freedom of Information Act requests, a 1993 Department of Energy Advisory Committee, the Advisory Committee on Human Radiation Experiments, ACHRE, investigated and detailed the Fernald study in its final report. The committee found that consent was inadequate because guardians were not informed about the use of radioactive tracers. The experiments were part of a broader pattern of non-therapeutic radiation studies on vulnerable populations during the Cold War era. In 1995, MIT and Quaker Oats reached a class action settlement with more than 30 former Fernald residents and their families. The settlement provided financial compensation, health monitoring, and an apology from the institutions. MIT President Charles Vest issued a public statement acknowledging the experiments and expressing regret for the lack of full disclosure. No criminal charges were filed, and the amounts paid were not publicly specified in detail but were described as substantial for the affected individuals. The Fernald case contributed to reforms in research ethics, reinforcing requirements for clear informed consent, especially for vulnerable groups such as children and institutionalized persons. It remains a documented example of mid-20th century radiation tracer studies. Sources include the ACHRE Final Report chapter on the Fernald experiments, MIT historical statements, Smithsonian Magazine coverage, and declassified government documents, all publicly accessible for verification. What do you think? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and please subscribe to see next story.